Okay, we're looking back at Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Hell yeah!
The core game is broken down into 18 chapters, so I'm going to run through each one. For every chapter I'll talk about my favourite thing that Remake does, but also something I preferred about the original. It's just for fun, my points are subjective, and I'm going to try and keep this 50-50.
50-50 is pretty good odds if you ask me.
Now, the original game didn't actually have chapters, so I'll be comparing each one to the equivalent section of the original. And for starters, I actually prefer that the original doesn't have chapters, or that it's broken down into 3 games, I guess. To me, Final Fantasy VII is one huge journey. It's more seamless, more sick as hell like that.
Yeah, what he said!
Alright, the first chapter covers the destruction of Mako Reactor 1. My favourite thing in Remake would probably be the changes to Jessie, which start here. She's given quite a bit more personality, she's real thirsty, she flirts with Cloud, and that's something that continues throughout the other chapters.
Oh, you are so adorable, you know that?
I love it, and right at the end of the chapter, Jessie gives you the Restore Materia as a reward for helping her. It's a tiny change, but I really like it. It makes the Materia feel a little more personal, a little more rewarding. There's actually a bit of story behind getting it, as opposed to finding the Materia sitting in front of the reactor like you do in the original.
You can have it, for saving my life.
It's a great chapter, but there is one thing I do prefer about the original. Avalanche are the ones who blew up the reactor, and I think that's how it should be. In Remake, Jessie's bomb doesn't completely blow up the reactor, so President Shinra finishes the job for them. And from Shinra's perspective, this is an opportunity. You can turn the public against Avalanche, use the attack as an excuse to increase military power and control, and even use it to spark another war with Wutai. Now, in the original, Jessie does say that the explosion was much larger than she intended, and there's never any explanation as to why. You could say that Remake cleverly expands on this little detail from the original, which is cool in itself, drawn from the source material, but by taking that responsibility away from Avalanche for the larger explosion, I think it takes away from the game. The whole point is that early Avalanche isn't perfect. They're human beings trying to do right by the planet, and innocent people get caught up in it. Barrett states that for the life of the planet, you gotta expect a few casualties, and he carries the weight of what early Avalanche has done. Later on, characters actually argue about that. I love these little moments of character development, having to confront the consequences of what they've done. Yes, we see characters feeling guilty about the bombing in Remake. Jessie still tragically dies believing that she killed all those innocent people, just like in the original, and it's a heartfelt moment even if it's a lie. Those deaths are on Shinra. But personally, I find Avalanche loses some of its weight when the player knows that Avalanche aren't actually responsible for what happened this time. I think it takes some of the bite out of Avalanche.
Pretty cocky, ain't you?
Before we get into Chapter 2, quick pause. If you love RPGs, consider subscribing to Bytes or giving the video a like. I'm a bit of an indie game developer who covers RPGs, and I'm replaying the whole Final Fantasy series while ranking them. Thank you.
Now, let's get this done.
Okay, Chapter 2 is Fateful Encounters, and I can easily tell you what my favourite Remake thing is. It's just the visuals. Getting to see more of the upper plate, the streets of Midgar are absolutely gorgeous, the environment, the lighting, and the sheer attention to detail are jaw-dropping. Getting to see these streets, which were originally 2D backgrounds and PlayStation 1 cinematics, faithfully recreated in full 3D, is amazing. It's a blast from the past.
Words to live by.
Even though this is now a previous generation game, there are still moments like this where you've just got to take in the visuals. There's so much detail packed into these streets and they still look incredible.
Exactly.
Now, what do I prefer in the original? Well, it's more about what wasn't included, you see. In Remake, Sephiroth enters the story way earlier than he should, and I think that takes away from the slow, gradual build-up to this legendary character. In the original, you're hearing about Sephiroth long before you actually see him for the first time. You hear stories about what he did, you see the trails of his victims, and you learn just how terrifying this guy actually is. And by the time you finally encounter him, he seems unstoppable.
I am.
Instead, Remake puts Sephiroth right in front of Cloud in Chapter 2. Yes, he's just in Cloud's mind at first, but he completely overshadows President Shinra as the threat we're supposed to be dealing with here. Not just that, I think these early Sephiroth scenes have far-reaching consequences when it comes to the pivotal story twists of the original game.
I killed you with my own... Oh, you need not remind me.
But we'll have to see how that plays out in Revelations. I get that Remake and Sephiroth are deliberately playing with the original story and adding new twists, but in doing so, I think it sacrifices some of the mystery, original twists, and storytelling that made Final Fantasy VII so incredible in the first place.
Think you might have overdone it.
Okay, Chapter 3, Home Sweet Slum. This is where Remake really starts to pad out and extend on the original game. Lots of stuff that wasn't in the original, but my favourite part of this chapter in Remake is just Tifa. We get this little tour of the slums with her, and it's a great opportunity to actually spend some time with Tifa. She opens up a bit about feeling trapped here, and she's clearly having doubts about what Avalanche are doing and whether bombing these reactors is really the right thing to do.
I feel trapped.
And I really appreciate these new character moments with Tifa. In the original, you obviously get to know her, and she is a well-written character, but Remake has the opportunity to slow things down and explore these characters a bit more. So lots of padding in this chapter, but when that extra time is being used to give the characters more personality and development, I think it works really well.
Great.
And this chapter is a lot more streamlined and focused in the original 7. There's a bit of materia and treasure to find, there's some stuff to explore, you can do a bit of shopping, and then you're pretty much moving on with the story. But I actually prefer how the side content works here, it's much less handholdy. You're just dropped into this little part of Midgar and allowed to explore it for yourself. You might stumble across a character like Johnny, and then you get to watch his little story play out in the background as you continue the game.
Right?
Whereas in Remake, you're very much guided through Johnny's story and other side quests. The game tells you where to go, who to talk to, and what you're supposed to be doing.
I'm looking for cats.
Don't get me wrong, there is good side content in Remake, like earning summon material I'll talk about later, but I'm not a huge fan of how it presents these fetch quest style side quests. The original has kind of side quests and optional content, but there's no big user interface telling you where everything is. No quest tracker keeping a list of objectives for you, it's all integrated into the world. You actually have to talk to people, explore, and pay attention to what's happening around you. I think Rebirth actually has higher quality side quests with lots of bonus character development moments.
Oh, Marlene, I wish you could be my baby girl forever.
But a lot of them in Remake feel more like typical fetch quests, like killing rats. And personally, I much prefer the old school design as to modern fetch quests that not everyone will agree with, but I feel like I have more agency as a player and I'm more immersed in the world because of it. I'm exploring Midgar and discovering things for myself.
That's good enough for me.
Okay, chapter 4, Mad Dash. I just realised this chapter title might actually be a reference to Aerith. One of his abilities in other games is Mad Rush, close to Mad Dash, and what really makes me think it's a reference is that Jessie gives you the Aerith materia here. Okay, this one is a big one for Remake. Yes, there's lots of padding and filler throughout Remake, but hands down, I think going topside with Biggs, Jessie and Wedge is by far the best addition to Remake.
Then let's lay down some rubber.
And this is the kind of extension to Final Fantasy VII that I wanted to see in a remake. It doesn't take anything away from the game, it adds to it.
Aw, thanks, bro.
We get to spend more time with these three, flesh out their characters a bit before they meet their untimely end. And it's a really heartfelt segment. It gets you emotionally invested in each of these characters. Playing Remake for the first time and already knowing what was going to happen to these guys felt really, really bad.
Together, we can take on the world!
I love just how much more personality these guys have, and it tragically hits even harder this time round because you better know these characters. So, this chapter also gives us Cloud's flashback to his childhood promise to Tifa that if she's ever in danger, he'll come and save her.
If I'm ever trapped or in trouble, promise you'll come and save me.
And I actually think this is an important flashback. It gives some much needed context for Cloud and Tifa's relationship, and I think it works better in the original simply because of where it's placed. In the original, this naturally happens while you're at Tifa's bar after the conversation about their childhood. You share this special moment with Tifa and it flows pretty seamlessly into the story. In Remake though, it gets dropped right in the middle of our adventures with Biggs, Jessie and Wedge. Personally, I prefer the original here. The flashback itself is good, I just think it has more impact when it naturally follows the conversation with Tifa, rather than in the middle of the current story with Biggs, Jessie and Wedge. It's a small criticism.
Satisfied?
In Chapter 5, Dogged Pursuit, Avalanche are setting out to bomb the next reactor, but the ID checks go wrong on the train, so we have to jump off and traverse the subway on foot. And this is another section that's been heavily padded out for Remake, but honestly at this point it's still pretty fun. I like that a lot of the enemies in this subway return from the original. You've got these creepy crawly enemies, and we can actually see them setting up webs throughout the tunnels, which feels more thematically appropriate than just seeing these things in random encounters. And that leads into what I think is the best addition in this chapter, the Crab Warden.
Take your best shot, asshole!
I really like this boss, it's a neat little encounter. It breaks up all the linear exploration through the subway, and more importantly, it actually feels like something that could have existed in the original game. We already had the guard scorpions, so if Shinra had gigantic robotic scorpions, why wouldn't they have other giant animal-based death machines? Ironically, it's a boss that breaks up the pacing after traversing all the subways. But that pacing problem only exists because it's so padded out in Remake.
You're damn right!
Which is funny because if you compare this section directly with the original, it's really short. After playing Final Fantasy VII and Remake back to back, it blows my mind just how much these sections have been expanded. You've got hour-long chapters in Remake that can sometimes amount to just a few minutes of gameplay in the original. And don't get me wrong, I enjoy some of the stuff Remake adds across the board. At the end of the day, I just prefer the pacing of the original, and that's going to become a trend.
You're kidding me.
That's something that carries over into Chapter 6, Light the Way. You've got to travel through the underplay and turn the lights out to open the way this time. It's mostly a gameplay-focused filler chapter, but what I'd praise about this chapter in Remake is the way the optional rewards are designed here. There's a few different materia hidden here that are well worth trying to pick up. It feels satisfying earning these for yourself, there's a few puzzles, and towards the end you get a glimpse of some red materia in Midgar's giant fans. It's totally optional, but you can take that side path, fight through a little gauntlet, and retrieve the chocobo summoning materia.
What kind of badass will pop out of this one?
I was criticising side quests in an earlier chapter. Well, I think this is an example of really good side content, and while you don't do this in the original, it feels like the kind of thing you would do. I think Remake has some genuinely good side content and stuff to discover here. There's not really anything to say about the original though, aside from just being a way better paced.
So long, Underplate. I hate you too.
Chapter 7, A Trap is Sprung. So this is Avalanche planting the bomb at the next reactor before crossing paths with Shinra and the Airbuster. And the Airbuster is an absolutely epic boss battle. It's the first time you hear that gnarly main boss theme in both games. My favourite thing about Remake here is the player agency you have before the fight even begins. You can find these keycards throughout the facility and use them at terminals to disable different parts of the Airbuster. What's really cool is that you can decide which part of the Airbuster to disable. You can disable its big bombers, weaken its AI, remove certain abilities, or you can just ignore the whole thing and find the Airbuster at full strength.
The big boy!
And I love that the game is designed to actually allow you to do that. Remake does a good job of building up to this epic boss encounter which blows your socks off. While I think Remake's version is mechanically more interesting, I definitely prefer how the original handles President Shinra. Because in the original, you actually come face to face with him. He shows up, you get this confrontation, and then he unleashes the Airbuster on you. It's a small thing, but it makes the whole encounter feel much more personal. While in Remake, Shinra keeps his distance and deals with you using drone projections, which honestly makes far more sense from his perspective. Why would the president of Shinra wander into a reactor to confront some terrorists when he can just do it long distance? But there was something undeniably badass about standing face to face with this evil dude in the original.
That's right.
Next up, Chapter 8, Budding Bodyguard. So this is where we meet Aerith again, and hands down, my favourite new addition here has got to be the new fights with Reno and Rude. Just don't make me choose between the two.
Hey, watch the flowers!
You heard the lady.
I love these fights, the music is fantastic, and they both have so much more personality in Remake. What's interesting is just how much earlier we get to fight them. Rude originally doesn't become a boss until much later with the optional encounter in Gongaga.
Gungaga.
And I love all the little references thrown into these encounters as well, like Rude stopping to replace his sunglasses after they get damaged. It's a tiny detail, but it's a direct nod to Advent Children, and it's exactly the kind of fan service I don't mind. But the question is, does he carry another pair of backup sunglasses after that?
No, I don't believe that I have.
But what Final Fantasy VII does better here is how it handles Aerith. In the original, she's just a normal flower girl, she's charming, funny, a little weird, and has this innocence that makes her lovable. Remake doesn't quite capture that Aerith nearly as well, because it's not my Aerith, I'll explain.
Aerith, what are you not telling me?
Remake completely changes how she behaves. At first it felt like she's a secret time traveler who's already seen how Final Fantasy VII plays out, or has those memories. She's aware of what's going to happen, and she's terrible at keeping any of it a secret.
I need you to...
Get Marlene to safety, right?
Huh?
I guessed. From the sword.
But whatever happens, you can't fall in love with me.
And I understand what they're going for. It's all tied to the Whispers, changing fate, and essentially rebirthing the story of Final Fantasy VII. I liked the idea at first, a huge new twist on a story for old school Final Fantasy VII fans. But we later learn there's actually multiple versions of Aerith. And personally, I'm not a fan of this form of convoluted multiverse storytelling. I just want one normal Aerith.
There's a final step that has to be taken.
Chapter 8, The Town That Never Sleeps. What a chapter. I really appreciate that they kept Walmart feeling so sleazy and stayed somewhat faithful to Cloud dressing up as a woman to break into a pimp's mansion. That sounds ridiculous to say out loud, but my favourite new addition here has to be watching Tifa and Aerith absolutely crush skulls through Corneo's mansion. This moment, combined with the music that's a remix of Tifa's theme, completely blew me away. It's awesome. And it's an extra little moment that wasn't in the originals, or at least off screen.
Really?
While in Remake, I appreciate the number of side quests you do determine Aerith's dress and dialogue options with Tifa determine her dress. My favourite bit of the original was that certain combinations of hidden side quests and dialogue choices would dynamically change who Don Corneo chooses between Cloud, Tifa, and Aerith. In Remake, it's always Cloud. In ways, I prefer this a little bit in the original because Wall Market had these hidden options and clothing items you had to discover for yourself. You could stumble into different rooms in the Honeybee Inn, find bizarre little encounters, and get some hilarious scenes that didn't quite make it into Remake. Although, to be fair, some of those would probably have been a bit much in modern visuals. I'd say Remake does a better job of visually presenting your clothing options, while the original did a better job of role-playing the process.
I know, thank you. Moving on.
Chapter 10, Rough Waters, an entire chapter dedicated to exploring Midgar's sewers. Of all the things that could have expanded on in the remake, I was kind of hoping to see some new parts of Midgar, but I didn't mean the sewers. It's actually quite difficult picking my favourite part of the sewers in Remake. I'm going to say the frogs. You fight Shahagan down here, who were random encounters in the original, but this time around they can actually turn your party into frogs. It's goofy, and I've got to admit, I love how everyone has their own unique froggy design. There's really not much to say about the original here. You quickly navigate through 2 screens, maybe have a random encounter or 2, and you're on your way. Much better pacing.
Oh yeah!
And that leads straight into Chapter 11, Haunted. Hands down my favourite part of the train graveyard in both games is Eligor. This undead chariot monster looks sick as hell, and in the original he was actually a random rare encounter. I always remember him because you can steal one of Aerith's weapons from him, which you can also do in the boss fight in Remake. Glad it turned him into a proper boss. It's a really cool encounter, and it's the kind of expansion that feels completely natural for a remake. Apart from that though, this section is pretty heavily padded. It's literally another section that's only about 2 screens long in the original. No boss, no massive detour, you just zoom through the train graveyard, you need to reach the pillar urgently. So I'd say I like Eligor in both. Remake has the bonus for evolving into a boss fight, but the original gets a bonus win for pacing.
Ghosts aren't my thing.
Okay, Chapter 12 is a critical one, Fight for Survival. This is a huge story moment. We're fighting Shinra over the pillar they're planning to drop, which is going to end everyone in Sector 7. And this chapter really peaks for me with the Reno fight. This time he's accompanied by Rude, which is a new element over the original.
You ain't got shit on us.
I think this is the best bit. It's a really badass fight. You feel the pressure and tension as you're fighting for Sector 7. And even though Reno and Rude are the bad guys, I was still on the edge of my seat for them as well.
Lift your wings, huh?
I love how the cinematics actually play through the gameplay with the user interface still on the screen. Somehow it makes everything feel more dynamic, like it's actually happening in real time. It's just a gnarly moment that sets up your motivation to take the fight to Shinra.
What have you done?
But I've got to say, the Platefalling felt so much more visceral in the original Final Fantasy VII. You see, in the remake, you evacuate everyone before the plate falls.
Hey! Over here! Come on!
It was brutal without the evacuations, but that brutality made Shinra feel genuinely evil, so much more threatening, and the consequences of what they'd done actually stuck with you. You're left genuinely motivated to take on Shinra, who are supposed to be the antagonist of Final Fantasy VII within Midgar, and this point carries over into the next chapter. Next, Chapter 13, A Broken World. While I didn't like the fact we evacuated everyone before the Platefall, I still think Remake does a good job in this next bit, letting us see the destruction and ruin of Sector 7 up close and personal, by actually returning to Sector 7, and it is genuinely a very atmospheric and heartfelt moment.
My God.
My favourite bit of the original at this point was Barrett screaming over Biggs, Jessie and Wedge. But this is also where I think Remake starts to suffer from some of that extra padding. Almost all of this chapter doesn't happen in the original Final Fantasy VII, whereas Remake drops us into navigating the underground and fighting through fairly repetitive sections on a side quest to save Wedge, who survives this time, only to be killed semi-off-screen a few hours later.
Did you just shoot your way in here?
Well, yeah.
I appreciate what Remake adds here with the atmosphere of Sector 7's destruction and its aftermath, but personally I think the original's pacing works better when you consider the rest of the chapter. I also think Barrett's screaming is more impactful in the original because Biggs, Jessie and Wedge are dead, no question, whereas in Remake you're left wondering, did Wedge survive or not?
Hey guys, long time no see!
And then the game's ending added even more confusion at the time by teasing that Biggs survives. Turns out it was another reality. For me, that uncertainty takes away some of the emotional impact of what should have been an even more devastating moment. Okay, Chapter 14, In Search of Hope, has us return to Aerith's home, learning about Aerith through her mother, and finding the means to take the fight to Shinra. So, what I like about remaking this chapter is the addition of an extra emotional scene in Midgar, akin to the date system. Basically, there's a hidden reputation system with your party. The more you speak to characters, prioritize them, or do things that they'll like, the more you'll secretly bond with them, and you get a little scene with the character that most likes you in Aerith's garden. And I really like this moment with Tifa. It's an incredibly heartfelt moment. She's lost everything to Shinra a second time with Sector 7's destruction, and it fuels you even further to take the fight to Shinra.
They took everything from us. Again.
And in the original game, we go straight back to War Market, where we find this giant cable. Barrett sees it as a symbol of hope, and we use it to climb up Midgar towards the Shinra building. And once again, it's simply much better paced. Biggs, Jessie and Wedge have died, Aerith has been captured, we've spoken with her mother, and now we're going to rescue her. Everything naturally builds towards this next objective. Whereas in Remake, we go back to the sewers for what feels like it should be a side quest. And I find this filler particularly frustrating. I don't think navigating the sewers is particularly bad gameplay wise, but it does completely interrupt the narrative momentum. We're all ramped up and excited to finally take the fight to Shinra, and instead we got to faff around in the sewers.
You want us to go back into the sewers with you?
Between this and the filler in the previous chapter with the Shinra underground facilities, it really starts to hurt the momentum established by the original game. The story feels like it's building towards this big confrontation with Shinra, but Remake keeps putting these additional detours in the way. I think this bit would have worked better as an optional side quest instead. Chapter 15, The Day Midgar Stood Still. This is us climbing through the ruins of Sector 7, making our way up to face Shinra, and there's not really much to talk about in this section in the original as you quickly climb up in a few minutes, so I'm going to focus on the remake for this one. Aesthetically, I think they've done an incredible job here with this scorching pink dawn forming in the sky as we look down over the ruins of Sector 7, and the environment really says it all. You realise just how devastating the Platefall actually was.
I guess we'll build another bar.
Visually, it's a brilliant extension of that climb from the original game, and one of those moments where I think Remake's added bits genuinely enhances the original experience. Next chapter, The Belly of the Beast. It is so epic storming the Shinra building in the original game, and quite a lot of that carries over into the remake. Just storming this place and working your way up is my favourite thing about this chapter. You can still choose to storm the main entrance, and you get these really goofy scenes where we're trying to use the elevator, only for it to keep stopping on random floors with random people. Or alternatively, you can sneakily climb a ton of stairs, and just like the original, there's some really awesome banter along the way. And progressing these floors, it's really cool getting to see Shinra's museums and expeditions fully realised with modern visuals. You can see how Shinra presents itself to the public with all this propaganda. Shinra are the good guys, providing so much to the people of Midgar, and what we saw on the way up here tells a very different story about Shinra.
Oh, hell no!
Storming this place and navigating these floors is also my favourite bit in the original, but it plays quite a bit differently. You've got lots of little puzzles to solve, and you have to find different keycards to progress further. The puzzles were fun, they weren't annoying, and I liked that you could actually earn some extra equipment and materia by going a bit further with them. So while I really like how Remake presents the Shinra building and the propaganda, I still really enjoyed the original's gameplay with little puzzles and exploration.
The mayor is the best!
Chapter 17, Deliverance from Chaos. It starts with a little bit of filler as we work our way through Hojo's lab.
It could have played out quite differently.
But it's all worth it as it builds towards an epic encounter with JENOVA that didn't happen in the original game. I absolutely love this addition to Final Fantasy VII. This time we arrive just before Sephiroth murders President Shinra, and we have to fend off JENOVA ourselves. And it's a sick as hell fight. You're chopping your way through all these tentacles, and the whole thing builds towards this final phase where a remix of the original JENOVA theme kicks in, and it completely blew me away. It's incredible, but I do wish they hadn't centered all the blood left behind by Sephiroth as he makes his way towards President Shinra. In the original, that trail of blood builds the tension and further establishes the legend of Sephiroth before we ever actually meet him. My favourite bit in the original comes straight after that. Vice President Rufus appears and gives this epic speech, and there's a badass standoff with Avalanche. And unfortunately, this bit didn't quite fully make it into Remake. And I really like this scene. As Rufus gives his epic speech, it dawns on you this guy could be even more dangerous than his father, and it builds the tension even further before this epic climax of escaping the Shinra building. Okay, final chapter, Destiny's Crossroads, the great escape from the Shinra building. I love this bit in Final Fantasy VII in both games, and I was looking forward to seeing this recreated in remakes so much. The motorbike chase with the modern visuals completely blew me away all over again. I can remember being in the 90s and my mind blown seeing this for the very first time. And the motorbike minigame was so awesome. This is easily my favourite part of the chapter. I love the music, I love how they've incorporated what feels like little remixes and reference to the Advent Children's soundtrack. And I love the new banter during the chase.
Come on, you see the piece of shit we're driving here?
Says the 300-pound sack of it.
Hey!
I love the new enemy types like the helicopter bombardments and riot vans, and I love that this time around you actually have to fight the motorball boss on your bike. It's gnarly and you're being blasted by this epic music. And this is where Final Fantasy VII would end the Midgar section of the game, overlooking the world we're about to venture into and realising that Midgar is just a tiny dot on this huge map. And that's actually my favourite part of the original in comparison, the fact that it ends here. It's what should be the perfect ending to the Midgar section of Final Fantasy VII. Personally, I think this is an incredibly exciting place to leave the player after this epic showdown with Shinra, but it doesn't end here in Remake. Instead, we end up fighting Fate, open up a multiverse, and then battle some form of Sephiroth, where we're cutting through buildings like they're blocks of cheese. Letting us fight and defeat Sephiroth this early takes away from him and his legacy, and it makes him feel weak. We're literally slicing through buildings by the end of this game, and it makes it much harder for Sephiroth to feel like this overwhelming threat that we're supposed to be building towards. And then there's the multiverse stuff, which I just don't think Final Fantasy VII needed. I was on board with the idea of changing Fate until it exploded into a full-blown multiverse with multiple versions of the same character. The original already has a brilliant complex story with plenty of twists and mystery surrounding Cloud and Sephiroth. I don't think we needed to introduce multiverses and different versions of characters on top of all that. That's all 18 chapters. While a lot of it does feel like padding and filler that's been added to Remake to stretch out the Midgar section, there are also lots of little bits that I do like that do flesh out the Midgar section as well. Okay, next I'll be deciding what are the most underrated Final Fantasy games. In the meanwhile, I've got Final Fantasy VII Remake 6 years later, where I rank the remake in the entire series, or check out my Dragon Age series. Have a good one.